Use of these basically faster than so the gross profit was surpassed our expectations. My promotion or we're planning to keep spending on promotion. So it is time. So we would like to start today's consolidated business results announcement. Please do not take any photographs. Thank you. Also, there is a camera from our PR division, but We will make sure that your faces won't be detected, so please do not worry. So today we have Yusaku Maezawa, the president of the company, and Koji Yanagisawa, CFO,
経営管理本部長斉藤剛でございます。
and Go Saito, the managing director.
以上、3名でございます。
So those three
それでは
members will be
取締
presenting the
役の柳沢より
consolidated
ご説明
business
いたします。
results. If we can have Koji Yanagisawa explain the results.
皆様こんにちは。
Thank you.
今日はお仕事の終わり中。
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming in the rain.
それでは早速ですが、2016年3月
If we can jump right in,
決算の概要について
we would like to go over the consolidated business results for the fiscal year 2015 fourth quarter.
ちなみにこの今日のですね、資料の
Today, as you see,
表
the
紙というかデザインですね。
our presentation, the design has changed, and there's a concept behind that.
今回から変わっている。
So this changed from the previous quarter,
それはグループ各社でですね、力を合わせ
but
て
the change in the design reflects the Start Today group's commitment to join forces with our group companies to create new value. So this is expressed as a bright gradation of colors,
その季節の
and these colors also
ながら、要の配信ですね。
expresses the changes in the seasons.
今日はこちらですけれども、また次以降ですね、色の方が変わっていく。
So the next consolidated business announcements, you will see a different color.
それでは、早速数字の方のご説明
So I can go over the business results.
させていただいている資料
So if you will look at page 3 on the documents that you should have.
2016年3月期の
So this is the fourth quarter results. The transaction value. Previous fiscal year was 129 billion, but this fiscal year was 159.5 billion, up by 24%. And sales was 41.1 billion previous year, and this year it was 54.4 billion. So this is a 32% growth year on year. The operating profit was 15 billion previously, but now it's 17.7. So this has also grown by 18% year on year. And profit attributed to parent company shareholders was 8.9 billion, but it has increased to 11.9 billion, so it's up by 33%. ROE was 40.4% previous year, but this year was 55.4%. And this has grown significantly. Dividend is now 47 yen instead of 34 yen, so it's grown by 4, and the dividend payout ratio is 41.8%. And although the macro environment wasn't very favorable, and many said that it's impossible to accelerate growth due to the warm winter and other factors, but Start Today actually realized high growth, and in fact was able to even accelerate growth. Having said that, we fell short of our target. As you can see, the transaction value, we only did 95% of the target. Sales, operating profit was only 93%, but sales was 101%. But in terms of transaction value, we fell slightly short of our initial targets, and we will get into that in detail later. This is page 4 of the documents you have. This is a line graph showing the shift in quarterly transaction value. As you can see, the fourth quarter of 2015, we bottomed out. It was the lowest at that time, especially. But since then, we've grown in the third quarter and fourth quarter. And transaction value grew by 29%, especially in the fourth quarter. So and as we have mentioned before, we've strategically scaled back on the B2B business. If we just look at the ZOZOTOWN business, the momentum becomes even clearer. Especially the fourth quarter, we saw 40% growth just in ZOZOTOWN. And this is actually back to levels we saw in the fourth quarter or third quarter of fiscal year 2012. Until fiscal year 2013 third quarter, we used to spend 5 to 7% of the transaction value for promotions. But since then, we've only spent 1 to 3% on promotions. So we didn't do that many promotions, but we still achieved high growth. So we think that we did pretty well. Now on to page 5. This is the increase-decrease analysis of operating profit. It's a year-on-year comparison. As you can see, the transaction value has gone up by 3.5 billion yen. And we improved the gross profit margin ratio, so that improved by 2.1 billion. This is due to the change in the brand mix and sales by relatively new stores who joined a few years ago and used business has increased, so this has contributed to the improvement in gross margin ratio. And promotion fees, it was 2.5% against the transaction value, and then the previous year was 1.3%. So it has gone up slightly. So that has added costs. Another added cost is the shipping cost. So we offer same-day shipping, and on top of that, we've expanded the area to the Nagoya area, and that has added 0.7 billion yen costs. Next, if you can see the plan comparison, the operating profit was 19.1 billion. That was our plan, but this will show you what has happened in the meantime. The gross profit improved, as I mentioned. But the promotions, like the previous year, we were planning to keep spending on promotions low, but we increased our spending slightly in the second half of the year. And in terms of ZOZOUSE, we made extra efforts to purchase more inventory, and we accelerated our efforts to secure more inventory, more than we had initially planned. So that added 0.4 billion yen in costs. So the key factors is the promotion costs and also the cost that we spent to secure inventory for ZOZOUSE. Those are two key cost contributors. And then on to the balance sheet. It's page 7 on your materials. The key factor is that last November we bought back 19.0 billion in shares. And therefore we managed to decrease net assets from 63.5% to 51.4%. And our business model is such that we will continue to accumulate cash each quarter, and we don't need to invest much. So one way of improving our capital efficiency is to perform share buybacks. That is why we've done a share buyback. Of the 19 billion that we bought back, half has already been amortized. And in terms of our future capital policy, we will deliberate at length and try to figure out what the optimal capital policy will be. And the cash flow is a very similar description or explanation, so I would like to skip that. Next, the number of total buyers. This is page 19. Annual buyers, we saw 4.4,077,350. So this number has increased this year by 920,000. And active members increased by 355,000, and guest buyers increased by 565,000. We actually updated or changed the user interface to make the ZOZOTOWN site easy for even unregistered users. So that has contributed to the increase in guest buyers. And as unique users and conversion rates are the two KPIs we focus on. So those are our unique users and conversion rate is the two main KPIs that we focus on. So we don't really distinguish between active and guest users. Next, the number of shops. It's page 20. As of end of March 2016, we had 867 shops, and we saw many new brands join us this year. We added 280 shops, so this is probably the highest number of shops we added in any given year. And although ZOZOTOWN still has a very strong image of being cool and edgy, because we've been attracting a wider audience and our customers' needs are diversified, it is important for us to be able to meet those needs as well. So we will shift towards the image of fashion equals ZOZO, or ZOZO is the place to go for fashion. So it's more that consumers will start choosing the shops, not start today. For example, the kind of shops that we've added. This is just an example. Natural Beauty Basics, Polo, Ralph Lauren, Brighton, ABC Mart, and Samantha Tabasa. So we've not only been able to add more shops, but we've also secured renowned brands that are well recognized. Next, the active member distribution. It's page 21 on your documents, but until now, we actually only focus on member distribution, so all the members, all the registered members. But starting this quarter, we focused on active members, so people who actually buy from our site or services. And as you can see, there's no difference in between geographical distribution and age distribution. But the gender ratio is significantly different. As you can see, women's ratio is quite high. And we also have data for active member distribution for the past. So if you have any interest, please contact Go Saito. Next, the annual purchase amount in pieces per active member. This is page 22. Annual purchase amount of active member is 47,937 yen, which is a 10% year-on-year increase. So in the second quarter, of 2015, this bottomed out.
これは全部の平均になってますけれども、新規のアクティブ、既存のアクティブ、ゲスト。
So we've seen that we has favorable results for new, existing, and guest buyers. And we replaced the CRM system to be able to cater to different lifestyles and occasions. And also, brand coupon campaigns contributed to a higher ZOZO usage or ZOZO dependence. Average retail price is on page 24. The average retail price has continued to come down. So the fourth quarter was 4,922 yen, and for the whole entire year it was 5,099. So this is an 8.8% decrease year on year. This has significantly decreased since the previous third quarter. The third quarter was 5,300 yen, so it has decreased significantly. And this is due to the ZOZO use share of transaction value. This has gone up from 3% to 5%. And so this has affected the change or shift in prices. And another factor is the new shops are contributing more and more to the transaction value, and their retail prices tend to be lower than the average. So those factors have contributed to a lower average retail price. And then related to that average purchase amount per shipment, which is on page 25. So this actually has come down by a similar percentage. So those are the results for this fiscal year. And if you would turn to page 30, we would like to start discussing the plan for fiscal year 2016. So the transaction value was 195.0 billion will be 195 billion, which is a 22% increase. The operating profit, we're planning to do 22.14 billion, which is a 25% increase. So the dividends will be 60 yen, and the dividend payout ratio of 40% will be our target. And in terms of investment in facilities, we plan to invest 1 billion. And in terms of OP margin, for fiscal year 2015 was 11.1%. But in 2016, we would like to do 11.4%. And if we subtract the startup costs for the flea market business, the OP margin will rise to 11.7%. So we hope to do much better this fiscal year. And if we hit these targets, the ROE should be more than 65%. And if we can go through the individual businesses, if it's page 32 on your documents. So this is a transaction value in detail. ZOZOTOWN business, we plan to do 185 billion, which will be a 27% year-on-year increase. And this is comprised of consignment shops, with which we plan to do 172.8 billion, which is a 26% increase. In terms of the approach, we will employ the same approach as we did in 2015, but also add new initiatives. And purchase stock business, 200 million, and this is minus 71%. But we've mentioned before that we're trying to rein this back. So it's an intentional decrease. And in terms of also used, we plan to do 12 billion, which is a 51% increase year on year. So we will continue to work on securing more inventory. In terms of B2B, so we're shifting the B2B business away from our original business model to the Aratana model. So we estimate that more companies will make that shift. So we're looking at 5 billion, which is a minus 62%. In terms of flea market, which we started, we plan to do 5 billion for the flea market business. And we would like to share data between ZOZOTOWN and Where. So, and to use our group synergy to differentiate with competitors who started in this business earlier. So that is it for the business results. Thank you very much for listening. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming today. In terms of the fiscal year 2015, as Yanagi-san mentioned, in terms of myself, the fact that we fell slightly short of the target is something that I regret. But when we announced the initial targets, many people were worried whether we can actually achieve it or not. And but as a result, I think we did fairly well. It's slightly short of target, and as you just saw the budget for the fiscal year 2016, of course, I wanted to publish higher targets. So it's a more conservative or moderate figures, even though I wanted to set higher targets. And I would like to, if you would go to page 7, there are new business initiatives which are highlighted on page 7. Of course, we have activities in other countries and also private brands. And so there are 3 initiatives highlighted there. And I cannot say more than that, what's written on the document, but I actually already dedicate more than half of my time to this new initiative. So if you can expect new things to happen. And in terms of Where, we will be making Where more widely available overseas. So that's all that I can say at this moment. And so I'm sorry that it's very short, but we will try very hard this fiscal year again. So we hope to have your continued support. Next, if we can move on to the Q&A, please raise your hand if you have any questions.
ご質問のある方いらっしゃいますでしょうか。前方左のお願いいたします。
My name is Shoda from Nomura Securities. I have two questions. So it's a technical issue, but flea market, you mentioned that it is going to incur costs. But can you talk about how much cost that will entail? And also in terms of results, can you talk about why the ZOZO use is actually contributing to more to costs than the revenue? And OP for this fiscal year was lower, but the gross profit was higher. And you mentioned that you spent more promotion costs this fiscal year, but do you think that your overall native growth has gone up or has become higher? And sorry, the third point is a new business. The overseas business, are you taking that into consideration, or are you actually getting into the overseas market? Thank you for your questions. Flea market? So for now, we don't charge any service charge. So since we don't charge any service charge for the flea market business at this moment, that's why you see the results. It's 0. But we will take into consideration what the service charge should be in the future. In terms of the ZOZO used OP, we haven't actually published that. If you look at page 6, it says that the used business contributed to 0.4 billion yen in costs. So can you explain that, why that's the case? We've actually, the previous fiscal year, we actually focused on securing inventory. So for example, we started distributing eco bags for any people who purchase those used items, so that making those bags, so the bags contributed to higher costs, and also we secured more inventory. So this is the OP. So if we buy a lot, and of course we can if we charge more and sell, then the OP would go up, but we didn't sell at a high enough price, I guess. And the second point is whether the native growth has gone up or not. One of the reasons why the costs have gone up is the promotions. That's one of the reasons. So we said that we wouldn't do any TV commercials, but we actually released the TV commercials. So, but then this fiscal year we are planning not to do any TV commercials again. And also we've launched the premium membership. So that's also reflected in the results. And the third point, in private label and overseas, you're wondering whether we're just thinking about it, we're actually going to go ahead with it. In terms of overseas, we may actually just do more M&As or gather more information about the overseas market. And in terms of the private label, we would like to move forward with the private label this fiscal year. But it's just we're starting a new business, but we don't know at this moment. We do not yet know whether that is going to be profitable from the start or not. So I would like to confirm the new fiscal year, you won't be spending that much promotion costs. But do you think? But then you're aiming to do high growth. So do you think that's because your native growth has improved, as Yagarashi-sawa mentioned? We actually, the CMF, our ability to do CMF is actually gone up. And the brand coupons, for which the brands bear the cost, that's doing very well. So I think that by improving our CMF and doing brand coupons, we can actually improve our profitability. In terms of a private label, it reminds me of ASOS with high gross profit, but also high costs. Are you planning to incorporate that kind of business model into your company? That might actually take away from your overall OP, but why have you decided to do private label? Of course, we don't want to do the same thing as other companies, and as you mentioned, like ASOS and other companies, we don't want to do the same thing, so we will not be employing the same business model. And I've talked about the private label for a while now, but finally we actually see a path for private label, so that's why we would like to start the business this fiscal year. My name is Kazahaya from Deutsche Securities. First, overseas. You've been in China before, but since you've been overseas before, why have you decided to go overseas once again? What's the background for this move? And if you look at page 28, you mentioned Material World and Fashion Valley, and where you want. What kind of synergies are you looking for? What is their business model? And the second question, the private brand is something that you've mentioned in the past, but why has it become possible to launch the private label this fiscal year? What is the key reasoning or key factor behind this year's launch? So if you can describe that would be great. And also, when you think of a private brand, it's actually the definition is quite vague. So could you talk about what does private brand means to start today? So if you can describe that. Thank you for your question. So in terms of the overseas business, Yanagi-san will be talking about that. Of course, for overseas, we've already invested overseas, so this is just an extension of what we've been doing. And the companies that we've invested in, it's not a very large investment, it's a minor investment, and we would like to use this opportunity to gather more information about these markets and also introduce where and see if there's if there could be a synergy between their business and where. And the three companies, but Thai and Malaysia is an fashion EC platformers in their respective countries. So they are focusing their efforts to become the number one platformer in their markets. And in terms of New York, they sell used clothing of luxury brands or used luxury brands, so it's a little bit different. But this was also a way for us to gather more information and to promote wear. So I think it was a good investment for gathering information and to make wear more widespread. So that's why we've invested in these three companies. And in terms of private brands, as you have said, there are different ways of launching a private brand. Of course, we've seen many brands and we know that there are different ways of doing this. So over the past few years, we looked at the production and also the conditions of the market. So we looked at all these different aspects. And then we've narrowed down our business model or the path that we will follow. So the last few years, we've actually dedicated our efforts in research. And since our research has borne fruit, we think that it's time to start now. And I can't really get into detail about what I think a private brand should be, is because that would be disclosing more information. But as I mentioned before, I don't want to do anything that other people have already done, so it will be completely new. The first part, in terms of overseas, are you going to be focusing more on making wear more widespread overseas? Is that understanding correct? Yes, it is.
その他ご質問ございませんでしょうか。前方の女性の方お願いいたします。
My name is Kanamori from SMBC Nikko Koryo. The results, the fourth quarter, the average shipping amount and the average retail price, they have both gone down. The average purchase amount per shipment has gone down, but also so can you talk about why it has gone down significantly? I saw that the OPO only grew by 25%, but I thought that it could grow even higher. But can you talk about what other costs that you are thinking of besides flea market? You mentioned that will be a cost increase. And also, could you talk about the promotion costs for the next fiscal year? And the third point, monetization aware, I think that was mentioned, but is there anything that you can update us on in regards to the monetization of where? And then lastly, can you talk about the consumer behavior? I think that you are starting to focus on the ZOZOTOWN business. But can you talk about how many companies are willing to share the inventory information with you? And what companies are willing to provide you more inventory? And there are other companies or brands that want to actually manage their entire inventory, including their own EC. They would like to do their own EC as well. But can you talk about whether you would be able to work with these companies where they hold the inventory, or would they have to have inventory in your actual warehouse? Is there a way to get around that? In terms of the point 1 and 2, I will talk about those 2 points. First of all, the various coupons, brand coupons, doesn't affect the average retail price, but that actually affects the average purchase amount per shipment. So that's the brand coupon has had an effect on that. And the second question, besides flea market, there is not really a large cost impact. And as I mentioned before, if we subtract the flea market business, the operating profit for the previous fiscal year was 11.7%. And also in terms of costs, and as the new businesses that Maeda-san just mentioned. So, but we have actually reflected the cost from those 3 businesses that we can estimate at this moment. And in terms of monetization and where, there is nothing that I can say today. Fourth, in terms of the brands and how they're holding the inventory, we plan to keep our service policy where all the inventory will be held in the ZOZO base. So for the brands, we will continue to ask them to give us their inventory so we can keep it in our warehouse. Is there any information that you can provide, number of companies, or about the number of companies that have shared their inventory information with you? There's no major change in that respect. The promotion costs, can you talk about, is it 2% as you mentioned in the past? Yes, it's 2% for the fiscal year 2016.
その他ご質問ございませんでしょうか。前方の方、お願いいたします。
My name is Kazahaya. Once again, I have one more question. ZOZO base. So you said that the capacity is 300 billion in transaction value. But looking at the number of shippings and the inventory, do you think that you have to actually secure more space, another logistics center, sooner than you expected? Can you talk about the timings?
はい、ご質問ありがとうございます。
Thank you for your
そうです
question.
ね、おっしゃる通り、
As you have seen,
ということで、まあ、ならすと
so 300
250億ということになるんですけれども、
billion is the
もう
transaction
今
value
その迫っておりまして、
capacity, but actually that's we're going to be reaching that quite soon, so we need to think about what next.
でもうちょっと前からですね、
And we've already started to look for
一応今期中
different
大きな動きは予定してませんので、
venues, but this fiscal year we do not plan to add another logistic
そう
capacity.
いったところで何らかの対策が必要になるのは、
But we are aware that we need to, that's an issue that we need to keep in mind.
その他ご質問ございませんでしょうか。ご質問よろしいでしょうか。一巡したようなので、次応答は以上とさせていただきます。
So that it seems like there's no further questions, so we would like to end the consolidated business result announcement for start today. Thank you for taking the time to come listen to our results. We know you are very busy. We thank you for your time.